Hey there everybody, this is Calamity Code with GAU, or Gamers Among Us. We're back here with a showcase. We're going to be talking about a game that was recently released and kind of look back on it in hindsight and see how well it's doing or how well it's received at this point. So the game we're looking at today is Anthem, which is a Bioware game published by EA. I should know this. What is the release date again?
February 22nd.
So we've got a little over a month now that it's been out and available. You can go pick it up now. But before you do that, we're going to talk a little bit about how it's doing, whether we would recommend it at this point. So I'm here with the Steel Grizzly and Trick Enigma. I'm going to let one of them start with our first point, which is review scores.
I think I'll take this one to start with. I had looked at a couple of them, and they all seem to be relatively low. IGN gave it a 6.5, which for them is really not that great. They said it had energetic combat, but it saves too much of what precious little content it has for the end game, making playing through this mismatched story a tediously repetitive grind. And that seems to sum it up pretty well. Like in the beginning, it seems really great, but it kind of falls through at the end, and what grinding you do have to do is made even worse by the seriously low loot drop rate for legendary items. So you can spend, I think it's 40 plus hours trying to grind for one item, and you may not even get it through that entire time. And it seems a little redundant. And honestly, that 6.5 is a very gracious score in my opinion.
Grizzly, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I agree with what Trick said. It's essentially a game that had a lot of promise when we saw the first trailers at E3. And I am sadly seeing a trend with games like this, where they're big AAA games that are put out that they show really good promise. They look like they're going to be awesome. And then when they come out, they have game-breaking bugs, or maybe the gameplay, like Trick just said, is kind of repetitive and it's kind of boring. And it's a really beautiful open world, because that's one of the things that I've heard about Anthem the most is, wow, this is pretty. And that's kind of, everything that has been said is, wow, this is pretty. Whereas that's about it. And Trick kind of hit that out of the park, saying, there's really not much else I can say about the reviews. It did not get reviewed very well.
Yeah, I think the IGN review didn't even take into account all the technical issues. I mean, like you said, we're a month into this game and there's still a bug where it can potentially brick your PS4 console, and that's honestly kind of pathetic. Like, it shouldn't take more than a month to fix an issue that could cost a player hundreds of dollars. Let's be honest.
Right. When the first reports of that started pouring in, they should have
immediately.
Honestly, they should have shut down the game for a little while, like made it so that you couldn't connect to the network so that they could fix it.
Yeah, and instead there's been no response whatsoever about it.
Which I guess kind of brings us to our next point that we're going to talk about, which is expectations. And I kind of addressed that already, that it was expected to be this awesome open world game that would put Warframe and Destiny 2 to shame and make it, worth that $60 plus price tag. Or if you were some people and you got that extra special edition for $80, it's supposed to be this awesome open world where you essentially are Iron Man. The idea, the premise is awesome, but like we said, expectations were kind of dashed whenever it came out. The demo, I got to play the demo. I didn't get to actually play the game since it came out. That's more Trick and Calamity. But when I was playing the demo, I was just like, wait, so this is the game? And everyone else I saw was freaking out, loving it. But then they had the server issues and then all these other issues, and it was just I couldn't, I guess a lot of people were looking through rose-colored glasses, because I was looking at it and I'm like, wow, this is really disappointing for me. I guess you guys have a better take on it.
Yeah, so I was pretty excited about it. I'm not actually into the looter shooter type genre as much as a lot of people I know, including you two. So games like Warframe or Destiny, they've never really been my type of game. But looking at Anthem from what we saw from the first E3 trailer and so on, it really looked like an interpretation of that genre that I would enjoy. It really looked like something pretty special that we could all jump in and play for hours on end, replacing some of the other games that we play together. I really thought that's what it was going to be, and obviously it did not live up to that hype for me.
Yeah, we kind of have all ends of the spectrum here. Grizz really wasn't thrilled with the game. Calamity was kind of on the fence, but was excited to try it out. And I spent $80 when I pre-ordered it. Like, I've been hyping this game up since E3. I couldn't wait for it to come out. I advocated for it. I did the review for it. I did the demo out of a whole 3-day weekend. I even took off work to try out this demo, and I got maybe a total of 4 hours of gameplay in, and that's with probably about 40 to 60 hours of just sitting there through loading screens and everything else. And I was like, you know what? It's okay. Games nowadays seem to have rocky starts. That's a trend we've talked about a lot, so I'm sure once it comes out, it'll be fine. I tried playing the game 2, maybe 3 times, and I experienced at least 20 crashes. And at that point, where I drew the line in the sand is when I tried to load it up and it immediately crashed on me, and I was like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. This game has scared me away from ever wanting to pre-order a game. It's honestly made me afraid to even buy a game the first couple weeks it comes out, and it's really kind of shook my faith in Bioware as a whole. Not that I had any in EA to begin with, but Bioware was what I thought was an amazing developer, but no, this game definitely did not live up to its hype in any way, shape, or form as far as I'm concerned.
Right, and another thing to point out here is that when we played the beta, they didn't call it a beta. It was called a trial or
a demo. They called it a demo specifically.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And then afterwards, when people were calling them out, they were like, well, this is more of a beta. And it's like, well, you can't advertise it as a demo and then have people, like, you only got access to it if you pre-ordered it. So you lured people into buying this game early by saying it was a demo, then pointed out it was a beta, and then you still didn't fix the things that were wrong with it when the actual game came out. And you didn't have another demo in there at all.
Yeah. I mean, you would think Fallout 76 had what they called the beta, and they had it all in all caps, like, this is the beta, like we're working on stuff and we want you to play test this game and crash it and so we can fix it. Whereas Anthem, it was a demo, which makes it seem like it's a ready product, but it was worse than an alpha, in my opinion. It was like, you couldn't even get, like, I think I tried playing with you guys one time and we couldn't even get to a load screen. Like, I think I played maybe like 5 minutes of gameplay. The rest was waiting on those servers for like a 2 to 3 hour window.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the issue that I had when the game actually came out and I actually got to play it. And I hate to say it, but the hype shows, or the lack of hype shows, like when I looked earlier to trade it in at GameStop because I waited too long to just flat out return it, the trade-in value was only $17. $17 on a game that hasn't even been out 2 months is kind of pathetic if you think about it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you guys. And I think that definitely brings us to the worth of the game. Like you said, it's $80 when you first bought it, and now trying to return it at GameStop at $17 return rate. And GameStop, is notorious for their really bad exchange rate, but that's really bad, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they're still selling it as if it were a new game. Like, so you go pick it up for $59, you try to play it, it bricks your console, but you take too long to return it, and you're losing almost $40. So
yeah, I was just telling Trick today, actually, a story where I went to our local game store, not GameStop, but it's called Game Exchange, and this was about a month after No Man's Sky came out, and I just remember them having an entire shelf full of that game because that many people were trading it in, and I really feel like Anthem is the next to do that. I mean, I haven't really been to any of those stores and seen what those shelves look like, but I would imagine at this point there's quite a few copies of Anthem being traded in.
Yeah, I think a good example is No Man's Sky is kind of a good example of a game that really messed up at first, but after a while it fixed itself. So if you guys are looking to buy this game, right now I would not recommend it. And I think everyone else in our little showcase here would agree, because I mean, for the game-breaking bugs, the potential that it could break your console, and like literally you would have to go out and buy a $300-$400 console for a $60 game that you can't even load up because the servers are so bad.
I think before anybody considers buying this game, you should read the review that Kotaku just did on Anthem as a whole. It starts from the beginning to the end of the project, the whole 7 years, the issues they've had. It's an 11,000 word story, and it's really an eye-opener. And honestly, it's probably going to turn you off wanting to play the game. But if it doesn't...
Or any Bioware game.
Yeah. And if it doesn't turn you off of it, you should still consider the fact that it is bricking some people's consoles. If you're on PC, it seems to be fine. PC players seem to give it that 6.5 average that IGN gave it. But as a console player, please do yourself a favor and wait until BioWare acknowledges these bugs and actually fixes them, which honestly we don't know when or if that's going to happen.
Yeah, so they one of you mentioned that it's still being sold pretty much as a new game with a full $60 price tag, or discounted maybe $5 to $10 at this point, I'm not sure, but even if it were discounted to $10, $15, if you're playing on a console, don't buy it. It's not
worth
that.
the risk.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you guys. Don't waste your money. BioWare is essentially a good example is a trash pit where a bunch of hobos are around it, and it's just, it's burning up. All the employees are leaving on what they're calling stress leaves. It's what you would call a fire cell, or that meme where the guy's just sitting there at a table, everything's on fire around him, and he goes, "This is fine." That's how EA is kind of treating BioWare. They're like, you know what? People are still buying this game. It's fine. So do not be the sucker and buy this game.
Yeah, so I do want to point out, I mean, maybe in 6 months to a year, we'll look back on it again and things will be different. All of those really bad bugs will be fixed. They have issues with the looting system and lack of, what do they call it, aesthetic content in the game that people are a little bit unhappy with. Maybe they'll have all that fixed at some point. I hope they do. I hope we can turn around and say, you know what, this turned out to be a pretty good game. But for now, you can keep an eye on it. If you're interested in it, keep looking into it, but don't go out and buy it right now.
Yeah, no, I would give this game right now, if we're doing just a score, like from the first part of our segment, my personal score would be a 1. Like, it looks pretty if you can get it to load, and the box looks pretty, but that's about as far as I personally can get into it. I can't play the game, so why would I score it any higher?
Right.
So,
and I do want to point out, the moment-to-moment gameplay is not terrible. It's, you've got 4 different, what do they call them, javelins to choose from that all have different abilities, and you can go around this relatively open world and kill things, and there's hidden bosses and all this. So it's moment to moment, it's not a terrible game, but again, it's not worth the risk. It's not worth all the end game issues that they're having at this point. There's not much of a story, and then you get finished with the story and there's not much there to play with after that. So at this point, I would probably give it a 3 or a 4, just because you might have fun with it. If you don't have any network issues, if your system doesn't crash and burn, you might have some fun with it playing with some friends, but you're not gonna love it.
Yeah, it would probably, my review, if we're gonna do that, probably be a 3 or a 4. So I guess that puts us at like a 3 overall.
Yeah,
maybe
2
with our average
2.5.
Yeah, I mean 2.5 or something. It's we'll probably do 3, maybe. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But it's just a really good example of game-breaking bugs can ruin your game, and like Calamity said, maybe in a year they'll fix it and it'll be good. But that kind of points out a really important topic that can probably be addressed in a podcast. But if you release a game a year, like, and it still takes a year to fix it. Example, No Man's Sky, or this game itself that we're talking about, Anthem. Why don't you wait a year to fix it? Like, I mean, I understand the publishers are trying to push it out, but come on, guys. Everyone's starting to wake up, you know? They're all like, this is bad.
But yeah, like, so a lot of these issues, like we said, were in the quote-unquote demo. I call it an alpha beta, or a alpha, I mean, but whatever. A lot of these issues were present there, so, I mean, they had the opportunity to say, you know what, we need to pull this back, work on it, fix these things, but they didn't. They just rushed it right after that, with all the same issues. I mean, they really didn't fix much. Another fun tidbit real quick about Anthem is in that giant Kotaku article that Trick was talking about, they initially called this project the Dylan Project for Bob Dylan because they thought it was going to change the game and become something permanent. And it's just funny how far they fell from that.
It not only did not change the game, it pretty much is kind of in a weird trend that 2017, 2018, and now 2019 is experiencing of AAA games coming out horribly bugged and pretty much unplayable.
Okay. All right, well then we're going to end it here. That was kind of our showcase on Anthem. A little bit of a look back on it, see how it's doing. Again, we might revisit it in the future, but you pretty much know our standpoint at this point. Well, anyway, so this is Calamity Code with GAU.
The Steel Grizzly.
This is Trick Enigma.
And thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.
Okay.
Oh my.